special Thanksgiving Day shir on Shmiras HaLashon. Never stop learning. Never ever stop learning. In fact, I like to tell the story that the Panovich Yeshiva and the Panovich Rav came from Europe to Bnei Barak, and they opened up the yeshiva. Said every single morning they daven Shachris, and every single morning the first shir they gave was right after Shachris. They would learn the Shulchan Aruch and the Magen Abraham. And he said as soon as they got the place in yeshiva, everyone got settled, and they had the first Shachris. The first thing he did was daven Shachris, and the second thing they did was to continue the Magen Abraham shir. Magen Abraham, for many generations, was the official commentary that one would learn to accompany the Shulchan Aruch to kind of figure out what the common custom was. And some 400 years later, the Chafetz Chaim wrote the Mishnah Berurah, which kind of replaced the Magen Abraham. Same idea. But in Panovich, they started the minhag before the Mishnah Berurah was written. So they did Magen Abraham, and that's what they continue to do. So we should continue to do our learning as well. And continuing our section over here, we're in section 16 of book 2, talking about the Parshios and what they teach us about Lashon Hara. And today we're going to talk about Parshas Tazria Mitzayre. So Tazria Mitzayre, in this case, he's combining the two because you can't have one without the other. Because why? Well, the Mishnah Berurah himself, the author of Mishnah Berurah himself, the Chafetz Chaim, or really Rav Yisrael Meir Kagan, Zatzal, the author of Sefer Chafetz Chaim, but we refer to him as Chafetz Chaim, he starts off by saying the following. Now we have this really long arichas, 2 minutes long, introducing it. Let's talk about the actual Sefer today. So in Shmiras HaLashon, we open up by saying these two parshios take a very long time in the Torah to talk about the importance of the spiritual impurity that come as a result of tzaras, of being a mitzorah, okay, and how to purify yourself from it. And the Gemara says in Arachin, this is on 15b, and Arachin, as you know, is this very long sugya on those pages about Lashon Hara. And it says the following, that one who says Lashon Hara, that all types of bodily afflictions come to him. Why? Because it says in Tehillim, Book of Psalms 101:5, that all those who say terrible things about their friend in private, those things shall I cause to sprout upon them. And those things should be permanent, as it says, smitzus. It says that it should be something that come to you in perpetuity. And that's what it means to be done forever or consistently. So that is what happens. And it says in the Mishnah there, it says in the Mishnah in the Mishnah regarding Mitzorah, that there's no difference between the Mitzorah who is sequestered after having had his bodily affliction uncovered, and the Mitzorah who is well known for having had a regular he's been sequestered, right? Meaning they have already established those things. So the words they use to describe those two types of Masorah are the Muzgar and the Mukhlat. Okay? And the difference between them is the Priya and the Frima is how they leave their hair, the level of disheveling that they have to leave for themselves. Right? So different types of spots they have on their body will tell them whether or not they have to how long they have to be sequestered. Okay, so how they have to ruin their hair, and they have to ruin their clothing. Okay, but we're playing on the word mukhlat over here, and the Gemara in Arachin continues on page 16 and says that for 7 things are people afflicted with bodily sores. And the Maharsha explains that statement over there because it's entirely possible that a person could receive expiation for their sins by having become a Mitzorah, by having become sequestered as someone with a skin affliction. So that is not the case of when someone who constantly does Lashon Hara, where they have to basically not only be put away for a little bit, but they also have to be set aside for a couple of weeks. So let's examine here the the seriousness of the impurity of the Mitzorah. Because when the Mitzorah comes into your house, as soon as he comes into your house, most of them comes into your house, the whole house becomes filled with impurity. It's like he's infected the air, the whole air. It saturates your house. And even if you sit under the same shade of a tree with him, he infects the air, okay, under him. And everything becomes impure because he's considered a source of impurity, right? He just, even coming under his shade of him, breathing his same air is impure. There are 3 types of tumah. Okay, so the Chofetz Chaim is gonna explain this in great detail. So you have the tumah that comes as a result of someone who is or someone who has passed away, right? Coming in contact with the dead body. Then you have the tumah as a result of something, a flow that comes out of a body. Okay, some type of charge that comes out of your body. Okay, something gross, right? And then there's the tumah you get as a result of having the skin afflictions. Now, so a person who becomes impure via contact with the dead, they are removed to the edges of what we call the Machane Shechina. They can't enter the Har Bayis. They can't go up onto the mountain of the temple into the temple courtyards. Okay, they have to be sent away from that. Okay, and then someone who is, and there's the next type of tumah, which is a zav. This is a man who experiences some type of gonorrheal flow that makes him impure. Baal Keri, this is a seminal emission. Okay, they have to stay out of the last 2 campments, and then the Mitzorah has to stay the furthest away. He can't even come up on he can't even look at the mountaintop, right? He's outside. He's left as far away as possible. Why? Because the Torah tells us he shall sit in total solitude, completely outside of the encampment. So even the other types of people who have tumah, they're still they're still in with everybody else, but they just can't interact with you when you are involved with holy things. Not like the Mitzorah, who shall be sitting solitary. And the Torah further says, in Pasuk 45, that his clothing shall be farumim. They should be ripped, okay? And his robe should be farua, right? So faruma and fua, right? So those are the 2 things that have to be. So it has to be, they have to both be something. So his hair is grown long, where he looks like he hasn't had any hair care in a while, and the clothing should be ripped. It looks like he hasn't taken care of his clothing either. Okay, because the main thrust of the sin of saying bad things comes through one's own haughtiness of self. And he thinks of himself as better than the other person and better than other people as well. Therefore, he has to go through a series of trials to humiliate him. Or he himself tried to humiliate somebody else, and therefore he has to go through these situations of humiliation as well. Because if he was able to see these impurities and these afflictions in himself, he would not have tried to find out the impurities and afflictions on somebody else. And the testimony to this, or I think it testifies clearly to this, is that the Torah says about purifying such a person that they have to take a piece of hyssop wood. It's erez. Is that cypress or is it hyssop? I think it's. I'm sorry. It's cedar. That's the word. Erez is cedar. That's what it is. Cedar wood. Azov, sorry, is the hyssop. And shnis solas, which is red silken thread. I'm sorry, it's red wool thread. Let me see. Okay, yeah, I think it's something. It's dyed wool. Okay. That's what it is. So so those 3 things have to be taken. And Rashi says that if a person becomes haughty like the cedar, he shall drop his way down to the ground like a tolash. Shni tolas is the other thing, right? The worm wool, which is the dyed red wool, okay? And then azov, the hyssop, which is a very low plant. Okay, That the person should see themselves like that, and that will help them atone for what they have done. And so that's why the Torah says that his clothing should also be torn, and that his hair should grow long in order to make him look rather unappealing. And so that makes him get the experience of having been humiliated, and such a person would no longer aggrandize themselves against other people. It further appears, says the Chafetz Chaim, based on what we know, that this mitzvah, okay, that a person, when they are doing good things, they create certain types of clothing that adorn the neshama after one passes away, and as that neshama goes up to heaven. And this is a statement that's found in the Zohar, okay? And this is also found in the commentary of the Vilna Gaon in Koheles, chapter 9, verse 8. Let your clothing always be white, is what it says in Koheles 9:8, which is to say that the white clothing is what tells the angels that you are a person of great merit coming up to Shemayim. And therefore, doing things that are sinful using one's tongue drapes upon you this spirit of impurity, and it rests upon all types of the holy things that you could try to bring out afterwards, and a person will not be able to benefit from having those vestments that would testify to your commitment. And these are all in the Zohar, Parshas Pekudei. So here's the quote from the Zohar. It says, and from this wicked spirit or evil spirit, there will be those things that will sprout forth other things. Okay, so what are those other things? Let's see. So he has a Hebrew translation from the. Okay, so sometimes it's. Oh, okay. So the word in Aramaic here is Talion Kama Gardinin Achronin, which in the actual original Aramaic, Gardinin would be something else. So he says over here that it's things that when you attach yourself to impurities, they arouse other senses of judgment against you, the forces of judgment against you. And those things will attach to the bad speech and to other things that are unclean, because a person has created them through the use of his mouth. And after those things happen, and you start to create holy words with your mouth, well, it's unfortunate for them and for their lives, because in this world and in the next world, because all of the impure things they created, those pure words now get gobbled up by the impure ones. And so when you say holy things, they become superseded by the impure things. And those impure things get in the way of the pure things rising up. And therefore, it's as if you never did the holy things. And if that's the case, when one says Lashon Hara, and then they do some other good mitzvah, like they say Shema, or they daven, or they say Birkas Hamazon, or they say blessings on their food, right? Or all the other 100 blessings that one should say all day. What's happening is you are creating a net and trap for your own soul, because all of these impure things are going to drape a spirit of impurity across them and immediately ruin them, right? So it's kind of like pouring bleach in the bottom of your bowl where you're going to make some salad, some fruit salad, right? Everything's going to fall into the bleach and ruin it. So it makes them unedible and disgusting. And therefore, a person should not be able to use them to drape themselves and adorn them with all these mitzvos. And the Torah therefore says that by the Metzorah, right, this is chapter 13, verse 46, that his clothing shall be rent. to hint to us the not only his physical clothing, but also the dressing of his own soul. And that's why also that the clothing shall be draped over until his face, because he used his mouth improperly. And if you look at the verse in Tehillim 12:5, that our own tongues that have raised up our lips against you, who shall take ownership over them? And that's what Hashem is commanding. That's why you have to cover your lips. And then what we also say is one is required to recite the words "I am impure, or unclean, unclean." Right? Tameh, tameh. And you have to make sure that everyone hears that. That's a mitzvah for a person to do that, and you have to stay away from this person, because this was their thing to do, which was to uncover all of the terrible things in another person to keep others away from them. Therefore, one is compelled to uncover the terrible things about what one does before others. Now, we have gone ahead and taken a long time explaining the terribleness of the sins of the mouth. And a person can see that through these things they have gone ahead and ruined their tongue. And they have no concept of all the things wrong that they've brought into the world. All the things they could see through all the Torah, all the Navi, and all of Tanakh in and of itself, all the things we've learned from Chazal through the Talmud, and all those things that people could possibly learn, that all of these things that you're doing could be ruined in all these upper realms. Okay, because basically he says over here, you arouse the opposing forces, the Hebrew Sitra Achra, the Yetzer Hara, but these are opposing forces. And that allows you to bring in those destructive forces to slander others in this world. And you curse the things below you. And you make all the entire world ruined. And you bring through this the Ruach HaTumah. So it's like you summon this Sitra Achra, and he brings with him the Ruach HaTumah. You summon the force of destruction, and it brings destruction in its path. Okay? And these are things that attach themselves to your own neshama. And that's what the point of the Zohar was. And you also ruin others around you. Okay? Just like we said in Erechin. So if our words are like oil and water in a cup, the bad words will float over the good words and cover them up. Yes, and that's a good analogy for it. Is that basically they cover them up. It's as if they can't possibly mix. And so we say in the Gemara in Arachin that there's a third type of slander, which is the rochel, the talebearer. And this is the third thing that can ruin a person when he uncovers something. And it brings along a third destructive force. Okay? The one who says it and the one who receives it, and the one about whom it is said, in general, that all who speak Lashon Hara, that their sins rise up to the heavens. And as it says in Tehillim 73:9, that place your mouths up into the heavens and your tongues shall drag upon the ground. So what does that mean? Because you've said this numerous times, that you are causing and arousing these forces of destruction to come down upon the Jewish people. And you cause all of the calamities that happen to them, all the things that are terrible. You cause the sword to be outstretched against them, and all types of evil, destructive forces. Okay, those things come down as a result of that. Again, all in the Zohar. So let's take a look at these statements from the Zohar themselves. Okay. Oh wait, does he cite it here? No, he doesn't cite it. So you find all these things in chapter 3 of the Zohar. Okay, but it doesn't cite it here. You can also say very simply that anyone who says Lashon Hara is like saying someone who is become like someone who's accustomed to be around somebody else who isn't comfortable around them. and you always are around such a person. So, meaning that if you speak lashon hara, we're talking about someone who is a habitual slanderer and a habitual nasty talker. Okay, and he doesn't stop. So we've said for an infinite amount of time that this is something that you have to really worry about. But in our case, we're talking about let's say you're around such a person, and everything comes through the power of the tongue. And even if it's not a lot of things that he's saying, even 4 or 5 words a day, and maybe 30 words a week, and over the course of a whole entire year, 150 words. Sorry, 115 words. Entire year. And if it's not considered lashon hara, right? If he doesn't think that it is, and it's just this one thing, so in one entire words, he has done 115 things wrong. Okay? And violated the Torah 115 times. For sure, when it comes to saying holy things, every single time you've used the word that is a positive commandment, so these things too, by prohibited things, every single word will be considered one negative strike against you. And if you are habitual in it, every single day of your life, you're going to have 80,000 or more instances of doing something prohibited. And every single sin that is performed creates an antagonist against you, something that testifies against you in the next world. That it, just like it says in Avos, chapter 4, number 11, that every single sin that is done accounts you for one outstanding antagonist against you, right? Something to speak against you. And a person's heart should be so riled up with making this consideration of, imagine doing so many things that could attack me personally. It's almost like arousing an army against me, right? I am creating an antagonist army, something to simply ruin my day at the end of my days. And if we look at it, there's really 45 words in a day that every single person could do, that if the person is always speaking lashon hara, sometimes maybe you'll say 100 words in an entire day. And that's why anyone who speaks lashon hara, all their sins rise up to heaven. Okay, because there's so many words. Okay? Because it just becomes so huge. Now, a person shouldn't say, on the other hand, hey, listen, I say in the Shemona Esrei, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Right? That's okay. Right? That's, if you were thinking about doing a sin, that's one thing. Okay? And you're going to, and you recognize something's a sin, right? I'm asking for forgiveness. I didn't realize it was a sin. I did it wrong. And you're like, all right, I'm not going to do it anymore. And that's what the tshuva does. I'm saying that I'm not going to do it anymore. That's what real repentance is, to say I'm not doing it anymore. And I'm really, really regretting the fact that I got involved in it. And I accept on myself to not behave that way anymore. With all of our great and many sins, we become very accustomed to doing this. We don't even consider speaking lashon hara to be a bad thing. Even on Yom Kippur. Even when I say, on the chait for I say before you in lashon hara, right? That's even one of the things you plop the chest on. Nope, it's just, I don't feel like being worried about it. And even if you're going to say, hey, it's from now on, right? No. This is something between you and another person, and Yom Kippur doesn't forgive you for that. You have to ask them for forgiveness. And a person who is constantly ruining their life with the bad speech, that's just what they do. They create it, make it worse and worse themselves, and they make things terrible through their speech, with oppressing others and this one says terrible things about them, and this one humiliates them, and so on and so forth. And this is why the rabbis say so clearly that the person who uses terrible and angry speech, right, with all the bad things they could say, they raise the sins to heaven. It just the stack of sins becomes so immense so quickly. So therefore, a person has to take to heart and has to be very self-aware that they should not be trapped in the peak performance, the height, the pinnacle, becoming the pinnacle of sin for this type of thing. That's what the pinnacle. They don't want to become that pinnacle of sin. And they say further that one who says Lashon Hara, Kadosh Baruch Hu responds to them, hey, we can't hang out. Right? Why does it say we can't hang out? Because it says in Tehillim 1015, listen, I'm going to have to pass, I'm going to have to put that person away who speaks Lashon Hara all the time. Right? Excuse me. I'm going to have to put them away. Okay? I will not have him sit with me. Right? So imagine like you had the opportunity to hang out with Kadosh Baruch Hu and sit down on the couch next to him and get to hold the remote and you get to watch your favorite show together. Not when you're not me speaking Lashon Hara. No. Furthermore, Zok the Chafetz Chaim, every place where it says that a person should be worried about the honor and dignity due to all types of people and not to uncover all of their bad traits, this is for a certain person who has not been worried about the honor of dignity of others. In fact, it's the opposite. They instead go and point out the failings of others. And they do that in order to humiliate people. And that's what they do, these things. Because when a person used to, back in the day, bring parts of the korban, and they brought oblations for the korbanos, they had to take their money to the person who had the specific. They had a specific coin that was a signet that you would purchase. This is all in the Mishnah in Shekalim, chapter 5. So you give them the money, and they hand you back something else that allows you to get the nesachim for your offering, for your korban. And they would tell them, I need the nesachim for this type of korban, okay? Because they're not the same for every type of. There's a shlamim and there's a chagiga, right? So I need the one specific to mine. So I give them the money, and then they would give me back my little signet, all right? And this signet, I would then go to the guy who's in charge of doing the oblations, and I would give him the thing, okay? And it would say on them what kind of animal he's looking for. Is it a calf? Is it a ram? Is it a kid? Right? And it's also if it's for a certain type of sin offerings like that of Metzora, they bring a sin offering that also gets oblation with it. Why? Because they need to know what they have to bring. Okay? And for a Metzora, they're not worried about them. Okay? They just say, you're the sinner. Okay? And that's how they knew. They would actually would make them feel that feeling. You got here because of this. You need the one for the sinner. Not the chait, but the chote. Chote means you are a sinner. In the Hebrew, it's very specific. And furthermore, says the Chafetz Chaim, that during their purification process, the Metzora should think about the gravity of what he's done wrong. And he has to give from above and beyond the amount of oil that would be taken in the palm of the hand of the person who's doing the purification process. Okay, so normally what would happen is what I'm hearing is that's weird is they have to take the shemen and put it the oil and it gets placed on the head of the Metzora. And this is unique, okay? So what's interesting about this is that he takes a palm of it and he rubs it on his head, and this is done because he has gone ahead and received Lashon Hara, and receiving Lashon Hara is because he believes himself that this Lashon Hara is permanent and true. Okay, and that's the problem, is that one should not receive false reports. Okay, it's that's even when it says in Parshas Mishpatim in 23:1 that one should not receive. It's not only an alert against the court against receiving false testimony. It's even for you personally receiving false reports. Okay, and I talk about this in the Sefer Chafetz Chaim. He says that the Rishonim say it very clearly, and therefore his entire brain is filled with little holes, little dings and dicks. Okay, and there's all sorts of problems with what they believe, and therefore the Torah has to clarify or cleanse his entire head with rubbing oil into it, and so therefore that way onward he will learn how to judge people a little bit more favorably. And with that, we end our discussion of the Metzora, and we'll pick off next week with Kedoshim and Bahar. And I look forward to learning more of that with you. Thank you for joining today, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time.